What's up, guys? You made it over to this, I think, third video now, and now we're going to move into creating our view models. Now, before we do that, though, we do need to implement commands that we're going to be using in our application. Now, this one is going to kind of be a curveball in the sense of we're just going to kind of do this, and I'll explain it a little bit, but we're not really going to type it together, because if you need a lot of explaining for this, I really suggest you watch a commands video that I have, because there's not enough time in this video to really explain it. But really, I copied, and I'm going to copy and paste here essentially the implementation we're going to be using. You can pause the video and copy this, or I may put a link in the description for a paste bin for you to copy and paste this as well. But essentially, this is what we call a relay command, and it's going to be 4 commands without parameters. And just to briefly touch up, it implements the I command interface. We created this at the root of our project called relay command, and we have a read-only action and a read-only function bool, which will determine what we're executing and whether or not it can execute. And we essentially pass it a delegate here, or it can execute, or just a delegate if it can always execute, and detect its changes. And when we call the command bindings in our XAML, it will execute, or it will execute it here, or check and see if the button should be enabled or disabled, if it can execute. If this is really confusing to you, I promise you, go watch my relay commands video, and it'll make a lot more sense, and then you can come right back here and start having some fun. But I just wanted to do this part quick because I want to keep this video a little short. So with that being said, now we're going to actually create our view models here. And our first view model is going to be the bulkiest of them, and it's going to be our editor view model. Actually, this may not be the bulkiest, but will be a editor view model. And here in our editor view model, we're going to make it a public class here, and we're going to I'm going to not comment for now. We'll maybe go back and comment later, but first we're going to create a public I command, control period, to add in the Windows input namespace, and then we're going to call this a format command. And we're only going to get them. We're going to set these in our constructor, and then we're going to create another I command, and we'll call this the wrap command, and we will get that as well. And we're going to have a public format model, control period, to add in our models folder, and we'll call this format get set, and we'll also do it for our document model. We'll call this document get set. Now notice we're making these all properties because we're going to be doing binding. Can't do that with fields. We must do it with properties. So basically here we have our format command. This is going to be what calls we're going to create a format dialog. So it'll open up that window for us. Our wrap command, which is obviously what we worked on in our format model, which will toggle the wrapping feature, and our format model, because we will be binding to the properties we set, and the document, which is our text in the editor. Now we're going to type in ctor tab. You'll quickly create a constructor for your class, and we're going to pass it a document model because we are going to create a main view model. So it'll all start tying together. So we're going to pass it from our main view model. We're going to be passing it a document model, and this is where we will set our document equal to document. Now also notice we're not using our observable object for our view models, which normally I would do it that way. But since we're going to be binding directly to these models, we don't need to notify a change of these properties. If we are binding to our editor view model and then changed it, we would need to do that. But since we're in our XAML, we're going to be binding directly to these objects, we do not need to notify a property changed. But moving on, we're going to now just instantiate rather, these commands and our models. So format command, this is where we're going to create new relay commands, but actually I should hold that off for a second until we actually make them, which we'll do down here. So we're going to create could actually do a private void, and we're going to do open style dialog, which we have not created this yet. So I'll simply put a comment to remind me, we will open a style dialog here. And just in case we try anything stupid, we'll throw a new not implemented exception. So if I try anything, I'll know exactly why I'm getting an error, because I'm stupid and I didn't implement it yet. And then we'll do a private void. We'll call this toggle wrap. And in our toggle wrap, we will essentially check our format, which is the what we created above. We'll check our format wrap property, and we'll see if it equals, instead of using a namespace, I'll simply do system.windows.text wrapping. We'll see if this equals a wrap, and if it does, then we will say format wrap equals system.windows.text wrapping no wrap. So if it equals a wrap and we execute this, it will then equal a no wrap. And if that is not the case, then we must conclude that our wrap needs to equal wrap. So essentially we're checking, okay, is our current format wrap property set to wrap? If it is, we'll set no wrap, and if it is not wrap, then that only means we must wrap it, because there are three values for text wrapping. One is wrapping with overflow, which we will not really we have no need to use that. So we have here now, we can create our commands now that we have the methods that we will be assigning to our commands. So we'll create a format command equals new, and this is where we're going to use our relay command. And since it's our format, we're going to say open style dialog, and then we're also going to be using our wrap command here, and this will equal a new relay command of our toggle wrap. So here we're assigning the actions we need to pass to our relay command. So in our XAML, when we use this get accessor here to call our format command, it's now going to execute our style, and same with our wrap command. We'll then execute the toggle wrap here because we are passing them as delegates into our relay command. Now here's where we're going to actually create our file view model, and this is going to be where we're going to manage our open, save as, and new documents. So we're going to go to our view models folder. We're going to create a new class, and we will call it our file view model. Enter here, and we'll say a public class. And this is going to be the very bulky one. So if you're looking to take a coffee break or something, now would be the time. So you could pause the video, go have a cup of coffee or grab a snack, and then come right back over here and hit play. Okay, so now in our file view model, we are also going to need the document we are working with. So this will also have a dependency on being supplied a document model. So this is where we'll create a public document model, control period to enter in our models namespace, and we will name this bad boy document. We'll have a get and a private set because we are only going to be setting it in our constructor. And actually, I'm not sure if I did that with the format. I'll have to double check that when we go back to it. Now we're going to create our I commands, which I'm going to cut the video while I type them out. So here we have our I commands and control period, because again we're going to need to add in our system.windows.input. And we're going to have a new command, a save command, save as command and an open command. These will all be commands executed in the little toolbar at the top of our notepad. And we'll simply be getting them because we will set them in our constructor, which is what we will do right now. So ctor tab, and here we're going to pass it a document model that we will call document, and we will set our main document to the parameter. And now we will also want to set the commands, but first we will have to actually create them, and this is going to be the not difficult, but the winding part. So we're going to first create a public void, and this will be called new file. And in this method is where we're going to just give us a clean slate so we can start a new text document. So we will then access our document file name, and we'll set it to an empty string, our document file path, and set it to a empty string, and then our document text, which we will also set to an empty string. This is the easiest method that we will be creating. Now we're going to move on to a private void, and we're going to call this save file. And here we're just going to, if a file exists, if our document is already a file that we have opened, we're just going to simply save it back into the position in the directory of our computer it exists in. So this is where we'll do file, control period, add in our system.io namespace, and we're going to do write all text. And we will access our document. We'll get the file path, and we'll access the document, and we're going to write the text of the document. So once we establish our open file, this will make more sense. But essentially, if we have a file path already associated to our document, that means it already exists. So we simply just want to resave it with the new document text we have given it. So now we're going to create our private void save file as, and this is where we're going to save our file to a point in the directory of our computer. And in this case, save file will create a variable called save file dialog, and this will equal a new save file dialog. If this does not pop up, hit control period because we need to add in our system.io namespace here. Next, we're going to access that variable, and we want its filter because we only are going to be dealing with text files here. So we'll send it, or we'll set it as a text file, txt, and asterisk.txt. So this essentially will filter out when we open up the dialog. It will save our document as a text file. We are then going to have an if statement here, save file dialog. We're going to display it. Now once we hit OK, the show dialog will return a true or false depending on if we hit OK. This is what we want to save it as. So since it's a nullable type, we will have to say does show dialog equal true, meaning we hit OK to save the document. And if that is the case, then we will do file. Again, for file we need our system.io, and then we'll do file, write all text, and here is where we're going to do our document file path and our document text. So we're going to do save file dialog, and we'll do file name, which is the path that we selected in the dialog, and then we're going to do document.text. Now we are going to have a little error here. There is one more thing we need to do, but that is after we create our open file, which we're going to do right now. We're also going to do a private void open file, and we're essentially going to pretty much do exactly what we're doing here. So I'm going to copy, paste, erase this, call it open dialog, open dialog, open dialog, whoops, that needs to be capitalized, open file dialog, and then open file dialog. And instead of write, going to read all text, and we're going to set the document.text property equal to that. And we'll erase this, so that is not necessary. Okay. Now here's the thing. Okay, so we essentially now we can write all the document text, and we can set the document text. But the one problem we're going to have here is we're not really setting here our file name and file path, which is actually kind of freaking necessary for when we're working with our application. Because if we want to go to save file, we kind of depend on that information when we use our file path. We aren't going to really be using file name, but I figured it's necessary if any of you want to make extensions to this application. So this is where we're going to use a generic, kind of like we did actually with our observable object. So this is not the first time we're going to be seeing this. So we're going to create a private void, and I'm going to call this doc file because we're essentially docking the information, I guess. I don't know. That's the best convention I could come up with here. But this is where we're going to use our angle brackets and the T again. And we're going to say T dialog. And here is where we're going to essentially, because open it, we're going to get the file name whether we save it or whether we open it. So we don't need to really create two different methods for this. We can use one by using our generics. And this is where we'll do document.filePath equals dialog. And we want to do file name, but why isn't that working? Well, it's not working because it doesn't know what the hell T is. T could be a string for all it knows. It doesn't know if a string has file name. If we tried to do that, it doesn't know this. See? And no extension method, file name, accepting first argument of type T. So how do we get around this? Well, it's actually quite easy with generics. We can also do this, where we use the where keyword, where T. Okay, so where T equals, now let's say we could say save file dialog, but that's not really going to be true. We're going to be using open file dialog. So what do they have in common? Well, what they have in common is they're both derived from file dialog. File dialog is actually what uses the file name or save file names of both open and save file dialog. So by doing that, it now knows at compile time that this will be of a type file dialog, so we can actually use that name. And we can also do file name equals dialog dot, I think it's safe, right? Yep, safe file name. So whenever we call this, we simply just have to pass it a type that is derived from file dialog, which fortunately both of these are. So now above each one, we're going to call a doc file, and in here we're going to pass it the open file dialog. And for our save as, we're going to say doc file save file dialog. So now before we save or open it, it's going to doc the document information by calling this method here. It'll store it into our document properties. And then later on, when we want to save the file, we have that information. So really, guys, that's it for this video portion. We have 2 more view models to go, and thankfully, they are both going to be easy peasy. We're going to breeze through the next 2 view models we create, and then we get to jump over to XAML. We get to actually start to see what we're creating. And I actually enjoy doing it this way first much better, because you actually objectively look at how things are going to work. You don't get distracted by, ooh, well, I'm going to have that button probably do this. You don't want to, at least I don't like to think in the context of, I don't want to conform to my user interface. I want my code to be as flexible as it can be, so that no matter what user interface I have, this code will work. And that's really what I believe the mindset you kind of want to have. So I like to create the skeleton of it first before I jump into XAML, because then at that point all you're doing is you're plugging things in. You're just plugging things in. You don't got to worry, oh, I got to tweak this or tweak that. You just create it, and then when you go to your XAML, you bind everything, you plug it into each other, and it runs like a, I don't know, insert metaphor about things running smoothly here. So, anyways, we're going to move on. We're going to do 2 more view models, and I hope to see you.